Hello, my name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network. Woman of Inspiration Awards support her, and this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who lead, inspire, and motivate. Today's guest is one who believes that the world's greatest untapped resources isn't technology or data, it's women's lived experience. I had the pleasure of meeting Elizabeth Elfenbein at Cannes Lions, where leaders from around the world gather not just to dip their toes in the sand and drink rosé, but also to explore creativity, innovation, and the future. While we met in Cannes, I believe our paths were destined to cross. For more than a decade, the Woman of Inspiration Awards, we've celebrated women from all over the world who motivate, inspire, and today, we're expanding that vision into the documentary storytelling, capturing the journeys behind extraordinary women who show the world what's possible. Elizabeth is doing something remarkably equal to what we're doing. Through the Under the Sisterhood, she's preserving women's lived experiences across more than 70 countries, transforming those stories into intelligence that informs healthcare, innovation, research, policy, and culture. Together, our work reflects something much bigger than either of our organizations. It reflects the movement to ensure stories are not only told, but they're remembered. After more than 30 years as a successful corporate executive, Elizabeth made the courageous decision to leave everything she knew. Not because she had another plan, but because she knew it was time to rediscover her own voice. Today, we'll explore reinvention, entrepreneurship, and the power of women's stories and why listening may be one of the greatest leadership skills of our time. Elizabeth, welcome to the Woman of Inspiration podcast. Listeners, get ready to be inspired.
Wow. Thank you so much, Monica. I am so excited to be on your podcast, The Women's Inspiration. It's a brilliant idea. It's really important to highlight and share the stories of women who are inspiring and hope to inspire other women. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited for today's conversation.
Well, thank you for joining me. I know that we've had many conversations, and so today is a little bit of a flipping this script, and I'm putting you in the chair and I'm interviewing. So it's kind of fun to be on that side once in a while. So I look forward to our interview today. And where I'm going to start, Elizabeth, is we know that women's journeys are never linear. They always take some really unexpected turns and to land where they are today. And certainly your journey is a perfect example of that. So, how did your journey lead you from corporate leadership to becoming the founder of Under the Sisterhood?
Wow, that's a great question. Wow, viewers, audience, I want you to know that I've had none of these questions. So this is in the moment. So the journey, it was an interesting one. I had a very robust and wonderful career in advertising over 30 years, where I ultimately was my last 10 years. I was a chief creative officer in the health and wellness space as one of the top leaders in the world at what I did and had a lot of acknowledgement, was on a lot of stages, big persona, big brand, all of that stuff. And what I would say is like the career was wonderful. I mean, I started as a kid who struggled academically and found my space creatively and went off to art school and then went into the field of advertising. I found my place in art school and then went off into advertising and worked really hard on the journey in advertising, worked really hard to do great work and stay focused on the work. And of course, I got married and immediately got pregnant and started having a family. So things worked, the journey was very interesting for me. Worked very hard on this journey, this corporate, if you want to call it that, the advertising space to do great work, to continue to grow as I supported my family. And the reason why I'm taking you a little bit of backwards on the family dynamic is because a lot of my trajectory And a lot of how I went was really thinking about how can I support my family? How can I give my children a good life? How can I put them, give them, provide good schooling, education, the things that I thought mattered. And it wasn't until I was an empty nester, a true empty nester, my son was in boarding school, that I actually had the ability to say, I'm done. I'm done. I don't, I've done, I felt that I had done all I could do in the industry. I had done enough. I felt very good about what I had done, but I thought it was time to start and do something new and different. And so while my career wasn't necessarily linear, with the trajectory was upward. It wasn't linear in terms of the jobs you take and the roles you take. And then the other things that are going on in our lives as women, raising families, you have this job, you have to keep your job because you need to support, and whether it's pay rent or mortgage or whatever it is you're doing for your family. So we have all these considerations along the journey. So it's multi-layered. And so the journey in the advertising was really wonderful and great. I got to do industry first. Had a platform to lead and inspire the next generation of both women and men, and hopefully provide a little more mentorship to the women in their careers, but to be there for all of them. But when I was done, I decided it was time. And I didn't know what the other side would look like. We had a saying on our wall at the company I was at, which was be great to do good. And one of the through lines in my last 15 years, if I look at my last 15 years of my career, is the work I've done in community. So whether it was, women living with breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer, whether it was, people traveling to Japan and needing for inoculations, whether it was happiness issues, creating a happiness app, or whether it was caregivers along the continuum of the caregiving journey, along all different kinds of conditions. I was in community, trying to support community. That was like where the work really resonated with me. Separate of course, doing my client work, which I love to do, but the work that really was my through line was being in community. So when I left, I knew I wanted to do something in community. I just didn't know what it would look like. I had also published a lot of articles around the intersection of healthcare, innovation, and humanity, design, what have you. And I wanted to do something in that space. And so what happened was I left the industry. And at the time, like, I left my job, but I didn't realize I was definitely saying goodbye to an industry that had treated me really well as a woman, where only 3% of the leaders, the creative leaders, are women. So, like, I was treated well in that capacity. I achieved a lot, but I recognized that there was more I could do, even not knowing what that could look like. And so, um, I guess I just had this strong belief system, as I said in some of our previous conversations. When you accomplish these different things, you build this, what we call legacy. You have this strong, sturdy infrastructure that gives you the confidence and the belief in self that wherever you might go, even if you don't know where it is, you're going to be okay. You're going to land. And so for some reason, I didn't know what it would look like on the other side, but I jumped off the mountain and without a parachute, and I said, it's going to be okay. I'm going to land. The question will be where and what will that look like?
Hmm. So, for the listeners, I mean, we're going to just share what happened. We just recorded a baller 30 minutes, and I realized that I didn't even press record. It was still on pause. So there's a lot of the conversation here that we're putting into this next question, and you captured it beautifully. We had some conversations about, embracing neurodiversity, about, leaders leading and were they born leading. So we're going to have we'll infuse that into maybe a future episode, but your career path and your journey was remarkable. And so I want to talk a little bit about, we said we are going to talk about reinvention. So the courage to starting over. So after that 30 years of building a successful career and a career that you truly enjoyed, you made that bold decision to move. So you're running towards another opportunity and you're walking into something that was very uncertain. So I know that you talked about the mental performance and that mental resilience muscle that you leaned into, but was there anything specifically that sort of was like a defining moment where you knew it was time and that gave you the courage to just trust yourself and jump off that mountain?
So you touched on the neurodivergent mind. And so like when I think about, I have ADHD, I'm neurodivergent. And I just, for whatever reason, I have this rebellious nature. I don't like to go with I'm trying to flow with the river now, but I tend to go against the grain and do what I think is right. And so what I would say is there was an inflection point. The company was struggling and we were having meetings and I was like, you know what? I don't like the tenor of the meetings. I'm like, I'm just done. I went home one weekend and I said to the ex-husband at the time, I'm done. I'm resigning on Monday. That's it. I've had a great run. And I literally went into the founder of the company. I said to the CEO, my friend, I said, please organize a meeting. And I resigned. I said, I've had a great 10 years. Thank you so much for investing in me, for giving me a blank canvas, for giving me a runway to do great work. But like we say on the wall, the wall says, be great to do good. I said, I want to be great to do good. It's my time. I don't know what that looks like. And she's like, can I give you a hug? And I'm like, you can. And I'm like, but I said, but at the end, and I didn't even at the time think about it, just came out, Monica. I'm like, she said, can I give you a hug? You're so strong. You're so brave. And I'm like, Susan, I have two daughters. I said, I have to role model what life looks like. It just
Mm.
came out. I didn't have Under the Sisterhood back then. That came out. Like it was the situation, I was done and like save other people's jobs. I'm good. I'm going to go on. I've done great. I have the history. I have proven myself, whatever it will be. I don't know. It was just something, a will inside of me that I had this will that just sort of took over. And by the way, I was having an interesting conversation with another leader who said that the path isn't always, it's not linear. It's not like straight up like this. Yeah, I had belief at the time, but once you jump off a mountain and you don't have a parachute, you don't know what the other side's going to look like. And so I start going on this self-discovery journey. I gave myself some time. I was forced to. I ended up getting in a terrible bike accident. I left the job at the end of 2017. Early in May, had a consultancy job, very interesting. And I fell off. I was off on a bike ride and came down a hill and I fell off. I broke my
Oh,
collarbone. It was before my daughter's wedding. I was having 150 people from around the world at my home. It was crazy. Anyway, it forced me to pause. I have never paused in my life. And then I made a decision that I'm not going to go back to work until I'm ready. And that October, so I went through the wedding, got her off, got my son off to school, left my then marriage. And then I started working and consulting. I started working at Comcast. And as I said in our previous conversation, I went from this really creative advertising world. The one thing I knew I wanted to do was go into where health, innovation, and humanity intersected. So I ended up going into age tech, working on virtual telehealth, working on more caregiver documentaries, like being in a space where we could employ and ensure that we were listening to people to create innovation that then, served them best. And so I was lucky because I presented the idea to Comcast. I'm like, we should do a series. I had already done a series of documentaries on the caregiver, but a day in the home of the caregiver, because you're in 85 million American homes. And so I was able to build on my experience in the advertising world and all the articles I had written about health innovation to go in and sell and then create what my then CTO who brought me in said, your artifacts were amazing. Like, how do we go and live in that world? And that was a very interesting experience because it was not a creative space. It was a very structured, different type of environment. I was like a spoke in a wheel, and I was used to being the cog, the leader, and the leader of the wheel, and it was very different, very humbling, very good to be humbled because you can, in the advertising world, when you're the top dog and one of the top dogs in the industry, you're like everything is about your persona, very ego
mm.
driven. Even though I'd like to think I wasn't, I kind of guess I was. It was about winning. And then when you go into this other space and then you have these things happen to you in your life, you're humbled and you realize it's time to really rebuild. and rethink. And so, for the first time in my entire career, I was on this self discovery journey. Who am I? And who do I want to be? And how do I want to show up? And I
Mm.
think that that was the beginning of before, under the sisterhood, because at the time of jumping and leaving and doing all this stuff, I lost my voice. You go into a large organization like that, you don't have the same voice. I had a big voice, I had no voice. And so I was heard in my no voice, but I had to very gingerly navigate what I could offer them and how I could serve that organization. And I think there was a lot of learning there. It was very humbling. And then I went into an age tech company when the idea of Under the Sister had come up. Um, I didn't initially build it, but I recognized at some point I wanted to reclaim my voice that I had lost in this process of transformation, of change, of, taking chances on self that, I needed to reclaim my voice. And that's where the journey began.
Incredible. So there are women listening to this and they're probably going, her story is my story because they're in a stage of reinvention.
Mhm.
And so many women right now are listening to it and they're at their own crossroads. You've been at your crossroads and you've come through the other side and they know that something needs to change. Fear is holding them back. But what would you say to the women who know they're meant for something more, but haven't taken that step, that first step to make it happen? What would you say to them?
So, it's interesting. I answered this question a little differently the first time, but what I would say is like in hearing it again, I've interviewed roughly 400 women. And one of the major themes that comes back is trust in your gut, one of the major messages. So what I would say is if you know you're destined to do something different, more, whatever it may be, trust your gut. Go start there. I can't tell you to let go of fear. That's something you have to navigate. What I can say is believe in self. And so if you can put fear aside and go into believing you haven't done all the things you've done in your life the way you've done them without some sort of core belief that you can do it. And so you have to sort of go back and own that. And I think a lot of that sometimes, it can take a long time. You have to go on that inner journey and remember who you are and what got you to where you are and rediscover that sense of self and that sense of belief. Sometimes you just have that belief. Like, I think it really depends on how we're all built. Part of it's a mindset, part of it's literally how we're built. A neurodivergent person might be less touched by what everybody else is doing. And just because we're so hyper focused, go for it, not knowing what's on the other side. But inherently built within them intrinsically is a belief that they will get to the other side. They just might not know what it looks like. So, what I would say is trust your gut, believe in yourself, find ways, however you need to do that to restore that belief that got you to where you are, and then go for it. Because you know what? What I would say is I had no idea what the other side would look like. I didn't know 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when I left the job and industry that I would have founded Under the Sisterhood. Now it's 4 years in the making, and that I would connect with women from over 70 countries, that I'd have relationships with magnificent women that I'd help lift and share and have shared experience that could only build and unify women and build amazing things together. I would never have imagined that. That just happened because I had this inherent belief and trust that whatever was on the other side it was gonna be okay. And then,
Mm.
my natural born, as I talked about earlier, sense of leadership, of things I could do, the legacy of the things I built gives me more belief in being able to build something else. And of course, it does. The truth is, it does also credentialize you with others who you might be going out and having the conversations with, tapping into your network, trusting, that it's going to be okay. Because what I would say is like none of us know what tomorrow is going to look like. There's so much today. We live in a time that is so uncertain, Monica. We don't know what it's going to look like. So you have to trust yourself. You have to trust the people in your inner circle that what you're building is the right thing and that it's going to be okay.
I think probably what sticks out the most to me, and I was sharing that I just got off a podcast with a mental performance coach, was just that self-belief is probably one of the biggest things that will single biggest things. The next thing is action. So self-belief and action. And those two things will carry you into some incredible opportunities and really change your life. So, for those listening, you know, hands down, just have the courage to take that next step, to jump off that mountain. And for me, I did the same thing. I mean,
Mm.
it was led by not the same that you're like, I think we all jump off that cliff or jump off that mountain without a plan B or a parachute for a different reason, right? For me, it was survival. You, it was like self discovery, and you've just had enough, which is different. And I think everybody has their own why that gets you to that point. And I think that's important to note as well for those that are kind of listening and at that crossroads. But I want to talk about something, a couple things we talked about in a prior conversation, not the one that we just recorded and didn't press play on. But I want to talk about celebrating women. And this is really, really important. And so, for over a decade, we've been celebrating Women of Inspiration. You are a nominee, and we're excited to be celebrating you. And, making an impact across industries, not just in one silo, not just doing one role. And so, your work also celebrates women, but through listening. So, why is it so important that women feel seen, heard, valued, and celebrated?
Great question. And it's really interesting, as you said, being on the other side and being asked the question. I think for forever, so you could say for decades, for centuries, women are out there, they have these giant shoulders and they continue to do, they shine their light on the world, they bring life into the world. We do so many things to make the world a better place, and we do it quietly. We do it like, we're just every day. This is just life. How do we lift the world up? How do we bring the next gen? So women have been doing that for forever. And I think that the reason why it's so important to see, hear, value, and celebrate women is because they aren't seen, heard, valued, and celebrated enough. And one of the things we focus on under the sisterhood is looking at everyday women. I love celebrities, I love influencers, and I'd love to have you on our podcast. But it's really important to me, everyday women who are doing extraordinary things, like yourself. You are the leader, you have this incredible network, this universal network for women. You have your inspiration podcast, you have your inspiration awards. And you need to be recognized and celebrated too. You're celebrating everybody else. So I think it's really important that women are valued. And I think the other thing is, we're creating the Smithsonian of women's lived experiences. The idea is that we can see, hear, value, and celebrate women, but if we're not recording, if we're not documenting, if we're not preserving and creating this archive of women's lived experiences, we're kind of doing a disservice. And so what I recognize is our platform, we've been we're about story sharing. That's our methodology, but it's the intelligence that we can learn about each other. Like me being able to just say, hey, I've interviewed what, roughly 400 women, and one of the top messages that they leave us is trust your instinct, is being able to pull out these insights because we can affect policy, we can affect change in some way, policy, system, society, community, care models when it comes to
Yeah.
health. So I think as I said, by seeing, hearing, valuing, and celebrating, that's one thing, but by documenting it, we are now making it a record, and you cannot deny something that is evidence that's recorded. We create evidence so that women, what they are saying matters. So it's really interesting. For years, when women have been speaking up and speaking out, but nobody's been documenting them, or nobody with that
Mm.
intent. How's that? So I think that it's important not just to see, hear, value, and celebrate, but to record it so that our daughters, the next future generations can go on and listen to these stories and have a legacy themselves, maybe record the stories so that they understand why it matters to speak up, whether it's about a right, about something that's fair, whether it's about health issues, whether it's about an identity crisis, a workplace. How can we make the world better for women? And we can only do that if we understand the stories behind their unmet needs.
Amazing. And, one thing that we hadn't talked about is, and this is what I know for certain, the value of that is over the past decade, we've had, all the nominations where it's like, tell us your story. And so we have a vault of stories. And most of the women that I've, ever interviewed or even maybe have won an award, they've done that for the first time or they're telling their story for the very first time. And so I that power is in that storytelling for sure. And that's something that we both share because we live it and breathe it. And we see the incredible stories that are just not being told, right? So I mean, yes, women are fantastic, but there's also ways, and I love what you're doing with being able to grab those insights because through every story, there is so many words of wisdom, insights, and actually opportunities for solving the world's greatest problems.
I
Yep.
love that. Couldn't
Love
agree
it.
more. And that's what we're building. We want to help
Beautiful.
solve problems and make the world better for women. And if we make the world better for women, we make the world better for everyone because women carry the weight of the world because they aren't just out there, with a career. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, they're caregivers. They they are so multi-layered and faceted in terms of the way they give and the way they drive both the economy, but drive, humanity, if you will.
So my next is a lead way into this collaboration over competition. And, you and I are both founders, and you and I are both often asked about competition. Yet, what I've experienced is something very different. I've met extraordinary women like yourself who understand that when one woman succeeds, we all succeed. And I've said that time and time again, just like when we celebrate one woman, we're really celebrating all women. So have you experienced the same as I? I mean, let's talk about that collaboration, that competition. Have you seen, more of the collaboration or more of the competition? And what can we do to really encourage more women to have the mindset of there's enough for everyone and let's work smarter, not harder?
I've seen both. So, in my career in advertising, I've seen competition mostly. It has not been, I had a few people where it felt more collaboration, but if I look at my 30 plus year career in advertising, it was brutal. The women weren't lifting other women up unless you were in a particular posse, kind of like high school. So I had pockets of times in my career. So I don't want to say that unilaterally.
Yeah.
I think, had more success with men, which is kind of crazy. So it did vary. What I would say is I've been out of that world since 2017. So that's 9 years in November. And I would say that it's all about collaboration. And I think as a founder, so the past 4 years with Under the Sisterhood, you role model the behavior you want to attract. You're a mirror to what you want to attract. So what I mirror is collaboration. How can I lift the next woman? What can I do to support the next woman? And I think it's interesting, Monica, because I'm at a different stage in my life. I'm not young and up and coming, but even the way, my daughters are raised, lift the next woman, their sisters. Like, how do they lift the next woman and not feel that they're competition, that they can support and be really great sisters? And so I think it's an interesting, but I think what happens with women inherently, even today, is that like if they're not, it's an energy exchange. If you're not feeling the energy from the other person, I think it automatically goes to a competition thing. A wall comes up. But if
Yep.
the energy exchange feels good, there's a natural and inherent, how do I lift them? What I have found, and I'm sure you have as well, is like like I have a lot of people reach out to me for to join the podcast. So I meet with everybody. And Monica, it's been brilliant. Instead of closing the doors, I open the doors. I'm meeting more wonderful women who I never would have thought of. And they come in and they're like, wow, I love what you're doing. And I'm like, how can I support you? How can I help you? This might not be the right fit. What about this? Oh, I know so and so. Maybe you should connect. Like, so I always look for opportunities to connect women. And so, what I would say, Monica, back to the question, do you find more competition or more collaboration? I would say throughout my career where it could be more reciprocal, meaning because I was up and coming, where you would want to have mentors and stuff. I didn't have that. It was more competition.
Yeah.
When I became a leader, when I became more of a in leadership roles, executive leadership roles, it felt more collaboration, not always. But now, being outside in the world, everything is about collaboration because my job is to role model what I want to see for my daughters, for my granddaughter, for all the people, for future generations. Who is the woman? What is the legacy I want to leave? I want to
Mm.
leave a legacy where anyone would say, you know what? She might not be your cup of tea, but boy, is she a woman of integrity. She cares about all women. She would do anything to lift the next woman. That's if I were to go leave this planet tomorrow, I want people saying that about me. That
Beautiful.
matters. It matters.
Beautiful. And Oprah said this when she was in Cannes. She said, surround yourself with people who are your vibrational equals. And I think that really just sums it up. It's just, I find that the women that we surround ourselves, like you and me, and so many other women that are in our networks, they just are so driven on their own course, and they're vibrating at such a higher level that there is no competition, right? It's just they're so focused on bringing the visions to life, and they're not jealous. The jealousy doesn't exist because you want them to succeed as much as you want to see yourself succeed, and you know what it takes to succeed. It's a hard road. And so when you see somebody else standing into the spotlight, you want to cheer her on because you know it takes courage to do that. You know it's a long path because you're on the same road and path, right? It's very when you're surrounded by the other women that are doing some incredible things, I think that competition thing kind of goes by the wayside because you want to be supportive. Like you want those other women cheering you on just as you want to cheer them on to success. So we're very aligned that way. And, certainly with the Woman of Inspiration, it's about values. It's the courage, it's the confidence, it's the commitment, it's the integrity. Like there's a values in a leadership mindset. It's not about starting this and it's not about the money. It's about really there's something very different with the Woman of Inspiration that I've over the past 10 years, and I've had people, tell me that all the time, and it's because they're vibrating at the same equal level.
I think, and sorry to interject, but I think you'll love this, Monica. I met with a young woman today, late 20s, brilliant woman, originally from Afghanistan, lives in the UK in London. Brilliant woman, works around kindness. She's so bright and so talented. Anyway, she's talking about how her competition around kindness. And I said, you need to reframe. I said, you need to change your mindset. Like you need to embrace your kindness and focus on what your vision is, your way. Like, so for instance, if I spent all the time in the world looking at what you're doing instead of celebrating versus building what I'm doing, we're not in competition. We're doing different things beautifully on behalf of women, just like
Yeah.
Shelley is with female
Yeah.
quotient. She's doing something different. Why can't, like, so there are moments you have where you see someone else is on a trajectory, but then I go back to Elizabeth, this is what you're building. It isn't about so my competition in my entire career has always been focused on me competing with myself. I'm also an
I
amateur
was just going to
athlete.
say that. I was almost going to say that your competition is yourself.
And so even like when I'd have like the founders of the company who own the company would say, oh, so and so is coming in second because we were number one most awarded 4 years in a row. I'm like, I can't worry about that. If I focus on that, I'm not focusing on the vision that makes us different. Like we're going to go own authenticity years before anybody's talking, whatever it may be. I'm using it by way of example to say, stay focused on where you are doing what you're doing really well and celebrate the next woman, lift the next woman, because why does that hurt you? It only helps you. It's
Yeah.
good energetically, it's good vibration, right?
Absolutely. And we've had some great conversations, and I knew it was like a very synchronistic meeting in Cannes, and we just synced up. Our values are aligned.
Mm.
And so as we sort of wrap up, lead all of my Woman of Inspiration podcasts with the same question. Elizabeth, what is your definition of a woman of inspiration?
Good question. I would say a woman of inspiration is a woman who role models the behavior that she wishes to see in other women. And so it's not about every outcome, about every award you win, about all the things that you accomplish. It's about the way you show up in rooms and the way you are as a human being. And so for me, being a woman of inspiration, what matters most to me is that, as I said, when my legacy is that people know that I've lived in integrity, I've done the right thing. I will always do the right thing by most people, but women specifically, anything I can do to help support a woman to get to where she needs to go, I'm going to do it. So I think a woman of inspiration is a woman who role models the very things she wants to see in the world.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, Elizabeth. I would say if I had a mirror, that would be you.
Mm,
I always find that when I ask that question, it's very interesting because I listen to the question and I know the individual. And as I'm listening to the answer, I'm just looking directly at them as being that woman. So I just want to say thank you for role modeling and really bringing what you are meant to do for lifting women up and the work that you're doing with Under the Sisterhood. We need more women that are, standing shoulder to shoulder instead of tearing other women down. They're lifting others up. And, what you're doing is really documenting the journey of women's lives, which is so, so important. There's so many journeys, there's so many lessons, and encouraging people to listen to one another along the way. That is not how we just change lives. That's how we change the future. So thank you so much for joining us on the Woman of Inspiration podcast. It's my absolute pleasure to have you part of the Woman of Inspiration cohort and welcome you to the Global Woman of Inspiration Summit so soon, coming up here in November. And to listeners, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Elizabeth, how can our listeners find out more about Under the Sisterhood and the work that you're doing?
well, before I do that, I want to say thank you so much for having me, Monica, and thank you for the work you're doing. I met Monica in Cannes, like by the can. No
By
joke.
the can, by the washroom.
And she was so delightful. We just started talking, and you embody the type of woman leader. You are open, accessible, and lovely. And you were just so gracious. And then learning more about all the work you've done, I really admire the work. And I'm just so happy to be part of this and be having this conversation. So thank you so, so much. I'm really grateful for that. And now to know you and know that we'll be connecting in the future. I'm very excited for your summit in November. In terms of finding out and learning about Under the Sisterhood, you can go to underthesisterhood.com. We have a women's health platform called Under the Hood of Women's Health.com. Our podcast is Under the Sisterhood podcast.com. It's on all the platforms. We have a YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We're well, here and there on TikTok. I really do not like TikTok. I'm saying that publicly. Oh dear. But I want to say, you know what, Monica, and if anyone wants to reach out and share their story, please reach out to me at Elizabeth at underthesisterhood.com. I would love to share your story. And even if you need to just talk, if there's ways I can support you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to the journey ahead with you. And to listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, I'm going to encourage you to like, share, and spread it with the world. There is always going to be one woman, if not many, many women that need to hear these conversations today to know that she's not alone and building her dream life. So, thank you again, Elizabeth, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. And to listeners, stay tuned for more with the Women of Inspiration podcast.